Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Brand Design Masters podcast. I'm your host, Philip VanDusen, and today I'm really excited because I'm here with a friend of mine, Amy Woods. And Amy is an expert in content repurposing, and she's the founder of Content 10X, which is a niche creative agency. She helps content creators grow their audiences by maximizing their return on the content they create. She works with businesses, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders as a content repurposing powerhouse behind their businesses. She's also the host of the Content 10X podcast, which is an amazing podcast. There'll be a link to it in the show notes. You should check that out. And she's an author of a best-selling book called Content 10X: More Content, Less Time, Maximum Results. She also speaks on stages around the world. She's spoken at Podfest, Multimedia Expo, Podcast Movement, the Youpreneur Summit in London. I actually saw her speak there, and Radio Days, amongst a bunch of other places. So with that, I welcome Amy Woods.
Hello, thank you for having me. That's a really nice introduction. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, Amy and I have known each other for a little while, and we've met in person in London a couple times. And as I said, I've seen her speak, and I know that she is one of the people in the forefront, I think, of really popularizing content repurposing. I've learned a lot of what I know about it from you and your content. And so why don't you share a little bit about yourself and let people get to know you a little better?
Yeah, sure. I mean, after the lovely introduction, I feel like anything I say now could almost turn it downhill, to be honest. A bit about myself, yeah. So like going right back, so I was born in Canada. I'm half Canadian, half British. Well, kind of. I've got Canadian citizenship as well as British. I mean, before this world of content repurposing, I was a management consultant for a long time, actually, for 13 years. With Accenture in the world of mergers and acquisitions and change management programs and things like that. And specifically, I worked in, well, the banking sector, but also with some companies like Microsoft. So some really interesting accounts as well. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, I started Content 10X, so creative agency, 3.5 years ago, actually. Now I still feel very much in startup phase, even though when you say 3.5 years, it doesn't sound quite so startup. Yeah, we focus on repurposing content for businesses, so just helping them get the most value out of that content. Very much a creative agency, team of 11 people working at Content 10X. So, really happy with where we are at the moment. Live in the UK, got 2 little kids. That's about it for me. Love to go cycling, love keeping fit, all of that.
Awesome. Cycling. Winter must be hard, though, in the UK. The UK weather is tough, I have to say.
It's been a really, really, really cold winter, and I only took cycling up as a pandemic thing, actually, because I used to love going to the gym. And last March, when we went into lockdown, got the bike out of the shed, got the cobwebs off it, and started to go, really kind of started going cycling for the fresh air and exercise. But I've got really into it, actually. I got a new bike last week for my birthday, and I got all the extra gear, but it's absolutely freezing. You come back with, like, you can't move your fingers and your toes for about an hour after you get back from a long cycle. But it's getting nicer here in the UK now, so I'm looking forward to the fair weather.
Yes, aren't we all? I tell you. So that pivot that you kind of mentioned from finance and being a management consultant to doing content repurposing, like, how did that even happen? Like, how did that come into your life, and where did that shift come about?
Yeah, well, basically, I loved the career that I had as a management consultant, but it involved a lot of travel. So it was normal to be expected to leave your house on the red eye on a Monday morning, and they're very lucky if you ever got back on a Thursday night, to usually be 5 days a week away. So that was good in my 20s, I guess. Well, I'll say good. I mean, it was what we did. It was hard work, long hours, but it was interesting work and interesting projects and things like that. But I guess 2 things happened. I had children, had the first, had the second, and you can't really just go away on a Monday and come back on a Friday when you've got
Not and keep your
kids.
husband.
No, exactly. It would not work. Um, so then it was that, and I couldn't be the best management consultant that I could be and the best parent that I could be at the same time. That was challenging. So
Mm.
I'd always wanted to start my own business, and it's really funny because when I got the job at Accenture, it was just a 2 year thing. I remember saying to everybody, a couple of years, going to learn everything about business from some really bright people. Then I'm going to start my own business. But then 2 years became 3, became 4, and so on. And it just ended up, as it goes, you get promotions, you're doing well. I always thought that starting a business meant um, coming up with some big invention, something different. Be watching Dragon's Den. I don't know if you have that over with you guys, but Shark Tank, same
Yes.
thing. Be watching things like that and The Apprentice and things like that, and just thinking, what would my big idea be? And I guess, the big idea never came. But then, it came to the point where, right, I need a career change now. I don't want to do all the travel anymore. I need to get out of consultancy. And it was funny in a kind of ironic way, but I had this period of ill health as well. So I'd been healthy. I didn't have barely one day off in my whole career until I became a bit poorly after having my second child. And I had this year where I was in and out of hospital all the time and
Mm.
constantly then in recovery. And so I immersed myself in the world of online content. I guess I discovered podcasts. I was looking for online business information. So I discovered the kind of people you would expect in that category: Gary Vaynerchuk and Pat Flynn and I don't know, Chris Ducker, our friend Chris Ducker, all those kinds of people, and just learned that there was, learned about the world of online business and digital marketing as well. Took courses, all sorts of things, just fully immersed myself, reading books and things like that. And so I initially pivoted to a business where I was continuing with the business consultancy, but more in an online capacity. So I had a course and I was doing consultations and things like that online, virtually. And I was creating content. So I was bought into the concept of content marketing, putting yourself out there, becoming known, and all of that. So I was creating content. And I guess I started to repurpose the content I was creating, because it's how my brain works. I'm very systematic, kind of processes, and I'm always looking at ways to kind of optimize a process and not optimize any way of working, which just comes from the consultancy background. So I was like, right, I'll start with a video and then I'll repurpose that into a podcast, or repurpose that into a blog post, and we'll snip those videos up for social media content and create some tweets from it, a whole system of repurposing videos. And I had a team working with me, just freelancers, but a freelance designer, freelance writer, um, just people helping me with the different pieces of the puzzle, the different skill sets. And that's when I realized that there was a business opportunity there, because people could create their content and then have one single business, one single point of contact that manages the team that goes into complex repurposing. But so you don't have to juggle all those different freelancers or hire all these different roles in house. Just have one trustworthy, business, one source, in and out. In goes one piece of content, out comes lots of other content. So that got me really excited. That was because I'm a creative person, but I didn't get a lot of chance to be very creative in my professional career up to that point.
Mm.
From being really creative, you can be creative with business, come up with like great at solving problems with people's business challenges and things like that, but not creative in the way of working with fun brands from the start, and like design aspects, branding aspects, all that kind of thing. So it all just seemed to come together. And then the business story is really, just laying down the stepping stones. Really started with just me, um, and getting that first client and getting the second client, and then
So
bringing the
were you
first
at the
team member
beginning? I'm
on.
just going to interject. When it was just you, and you
Yeah,
didn't have a team
yeah.
of 11, were you actually doing the content repurposing yourself? Were you doing the creative? Were you doing like the slicing and dicing and posting to extra places?
Yeah.
You were
So
hands on.
yeah, exactly. So I was, yeah, editing the podcast. So I learned podcast editing, video editing, writing. Yeah, I was doing everything. But I must say that was probably only for the first client, and actually for two clients I was doing everything. And then brought in some support. But I am very hands on. Like my team do laugh about that. Like only on Friday, something went really wrong with someone's audio that corrupted, and the team that would have done that were finished for the day. So I jumped in and became podcast producer and I started from scratch and produced that audio. And the team kind of laughed that I can be hands-on when I need to. And it just comes from the fact that although I have different people in different roles now that fulfill the service that we offer, I do know how to do each piece. I'm not an expert like they're an expert, but I knew enough to serve our first couple of clients with just me, before I started to bring in the support. And then again, that just comes from how much information is available online. I taught myself the video editing and audio editing and like graphics and things like that from people's wonderful content on YouTube and places like that. So it's amazing what you can learn through content, isn't it?
So do you and to a certain extent, so that's what we both do now through our content, right? Is we teach other people what we've learned and what we know, and I take a great pride in that, and I love the fact I've always been a teacher. I love teaching, and so sharing everything that I know about branding and design and entrepreneurship. And you do the same thing. What's the balance that you strike between your developing your own content and your involvement in your business? What's the kind of percentage of your work balance?
Yeah, it's a really good question actually, because we do create a lot of content, as you said, because we've got the weekly podcasts and videos, and then lots of weekly blog posts as well, and social content. Yeah, from I guess in an ideal world, I always kind of expected it to be kind of 50% in the nuts and bolts of supporting the team with serving the clients and everything like that, kind of spending my mornings working, with the team and what's going on with the operations and delivery. And then my afternoons on the business, which I included content. So kind of, how you say in and on. So like in the morning and on in the afternoon.
Hmm.
And then that would be a mix of more strategic work as well as content creation. But actually it doesn't always go as you planned, does it? So it probably isn't quite in that way. I would say that the percentage of my time that I spend on content that we create and put out that is derives from me, because it'll be the podcast or video. I don't know. It's probably about um, maybe about 20 to 30% of my time actually, which is quite a lot, I guess, when you think about an average week and the amount of time on content versus other things you need to do as a business. But I just think it's really important. I think it is my role, my role in the business. And I want it to be more than that, actually. I do kind of want it to be 50-50, to be honest. Because my role is like the content creation and the, trying to be out there as the thought leader and raising the profile of content repurposing and in turn our business and our brand, and having a great team that then do all the delivery. So I'd like to get to 50-50, which probably kind of, as I said, kind of more around 20-30% at the moment.
So at the beginning, when you decided, okay, I'm going to get into content repurposing, I'm really curious about it. You started to learn about it, and you got your first client, your first two clients, and you were doing that content purposing yourself. How did you go about getting the rest of your clients? Was it word of mouth, or was it the fact that you were promoting and doing your podcast and promoting content repurposing? Did you write the book first? Like what's the cadence of what you did that drove your the real success of your business? Because you work with some really big people, so how did they find you?
It's really good question. So the first ever client, funnily enough, came from the Upreneur community, which I guess is how we met actually, isn't
Mm-hmm.
it? Through Chris Tucker and his Upreneur community. So you get the first client came from being on a monthly call with Chris in Upreneur community, and I came in and asked a question, and the question, highlighted what we did as a business too. And somebody emailed me or social media messaged me immediately after that and said, "I want to work with you. I love what you do." So first client came through that, and I would say that looking back, that some of it was the communities that I was in, and the fact that I was really fortunate to get some clients through, for example, the Upreneur community, because the first and second client, although the second client actually funnily enough, was somebody that I met at Social Media Marketing World out in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
Just sat next to her during one of the keynotes, and we got chatting, and then took it from there. Had a call the week after. So I would say that some of it is through networking. Some of the clients came through exactly that, the forums and memberships and things like that. But then we've grown a lot through referrals. So it's been massively one referral after another of just people who we work with then letting other people know, which I actually see as a good thing and a bad thing. Well, obviously it's brilliant to do good work and then have our clients tell other people, and referrals are brilliant. But then I also see as an agency somewhat of a weakness that you can't just completely grow on referrals, and you do need to have other ways of bringing in a steady flow of prospects and leads and all of that in ways other than referrals. But it's been mainly that 50-60% referrals, and I guess what happens is you get to work with some really fantastic people. And when they start referring you, and when you have the opportunity to let other people know that you work with them through testimonials and on your website and things like that, that draws more people in to become interested in what you do, because they think, well, if that person trusts them, then perhaps I should speak to them and see if I could work with them. But then the other way, of course, is content. So really early on, if I got the first client in May of 2017, 17, I think it was. I started the podcast in September and have been weekly ever since. I've never ever missed a week in all that time, apart from I think like maybe 1 week where we missed a week at Christmas. Every single week, a new podcast episode, which is repurposed into a blog post every single week, which is then turned into social content every single week, and so on. So that's a lot of content going out every single week for all that time as well. So some people have found us through other organic aspects of the content that we create. And then you asked about the book. So the book, that I wrote the book, that was released in 2019, at the very end of 2019, around that kind of November time, I think it was.
Remind them of the name of the book.
Oh, yeah, Content 10X. It's Content 10X, more content, less time, maximum results. And so that was a couple of years after I started the business, and it took a long time to write as well. So it was kind of a year in writing, I guess, and then another 6 months or so to get the manuscript out to be a published book. But that opens new avenues, reaching new people and things like that through having the book, and people getting in touch because they've read the book and things like that. But I wouldn't say that it's a massive lead gen, not as much as perhaps I would have hoped it is, but it's definitely a massive authority builder to have done that. But I haven't done any Facebook, any paid ads or anything like that, which is something that I'll probably look into at some point, but it's just been referrals and organic content, to be honest.
When did you decide to do the book, and was it self-published? Did you get a traditional publishing deal, or how'd you go about that?
Well, it's really funny because his name keeps coming up, but it was Chris Ducker's fault.
Okay.
Because he told me to write a book. As in, he really, really was like, he kept saying to me, you've got to write a book, you've got to write a book. So I gave in and committed and said, okay, Chris, I will write a book. And so it's self-published, and but what was your question? Is it self-published?
Yeah, how'd you go about it? I mean, primarily I wanted to know if it was self-published, if you know, how you went about that. Was it print on demand? Did you go ahead and get 1,000 copies printed and mail them out to people?
Oh, yeah.
Like, how'd you do that?
Yeah. So, and in terms of writing it as well, I just wanted to mention as well, in regards to what we do in repurposing, it got to the point where I had over a year's worth of blog posts, and that's when I decided to write the book, because I felt like I had loads of content that could go into the book. And what I did was I didn't repurpose, nothing kind of lifted and shifted as such, like a blog post becoming a chapter, but the loads and loads of my content was then able to form the basis of the book. And then I was able to spot gaps in my content where there was something missing in the world of like video repurposing or podcast repurposing or something like that. So I was able to create new content and then repurpose that to become a chapter of the book as well. So there was a lot of kind of trying to make sure that the book made the most of content I already had, and anything new that went in the book became more than just something in the book, but became more content. And I went the self-published route. I got support from somebody who it was actually just somebody in the freelance world who supports people with self-publishing books, and it's in Kindle format, paperback, and also I recorded an audiobook as well, which was um, really challenging actually. Even as a podcaster, it was really tough spending like all those days in a studio recording an audiobook version. But I looked at different routes. I looked at working trying to work with a publishing house versus the self-published route, and just decided seemed the kind of quicker and easier route. So it's really not that complicated. There's quite a lot of steps, but it's quite simple to get onto the different platforms. You really do just have to meet the various guidelines in terms of the formatting and things like that of the
Hmm.
book, and then apply to get it onto Amazon. Didn't have to buy lots of books in advance, didn't have to do anything like that. And it's on other places too, Barnes and Noble online and various other places that you can request for them to sell your books. We went through a bit of a process of making sure that it could be in as many places as possible.
Mm.
I guess the only downside of a self-published book is you don't just walk into well, I'd say Waterstones for the UK, but does Borders still exist? I'm
Yeah,
not sure if Borders still
probably
exists, but
Barnes and Noble.
yeah,
Yeah.
Barnes and Noble, yeah. You can't just walk in, I suppose, and see them on the shelf in the same way that you would if you'd gone through the more traditional publishing route. But I think most people buy online these days anyway, don't they? So
They do.
it seemed like the best. It seemed like the best and simplest route to follow. When you publish a book, if you go the self-published route, you can always decide at some point that you want to convert it to traditional publishing with a publishing house. So it's something that I might consider further down the line, actually, just to get it into some of the shops as well. But that's what I did at that point in time. I was really just trying to get something out there to help people who don't, aren't in the category of working with us. So they're not going to have it done for them. But then how can I help them best to do it themselves? And that was the real driver for it, because I really thought about all the content that I create, the weekly podcasts and blog posts and things like that. And it's all done by you, like the DIY audience, really helping them. But the next step for them with my business was, well, are you suitable for our services? Which quite often it was a completely different, like, avatar, as you would say. But like the people listening to podcasts and blog posts aren't necessarily going to be the people who'd be interested in our service. There wasn't anything else to offer them apart from more free content. So it felt like a really good thing to do, and filling a gap in what I offer in the business, to say, well, actually, the next step is, why don't you get a copy of the book? So that was really one of the key drivers for doing the book, to address the gap of helping people who want to do it for themselves, or want to do it in house and can give it to the content managers or the social media managers and that kind of thing.
That was one of the things that I remember Chris saying, and I think I actually remember the call or when he recommended that you do a book. But one of the things that I remember him saying about his own business is that when he wrote Virtual Freedom, he did that after he had been getting really active and developing content and stuff like that. And he said that if there was someone asked him if there was one regret that he had in how he went about his business, what would he have changed? And he said, I would have published my book earlier, because I've developed this whole audience and I didn't have any place for them to send them or anything to give them. And then I developed the book later and I was able to drive them to that book. But if I'd had the book in the beginning, it would have been, I would have progressed faster. And I thought that was really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I remember him saying that as well. Yeah, he
Yeah.
did it. He slightly got the ordering wrong, didn't he, in terms of well, looking back, he wished he'd done it differently.
Yeah. Well, you said one thing that I resonated with myself, because I've done it the same way, which is, when I made my commitment to YouTube, I published a video every week for 4 years without missing a single week. And you said that when you were doing your podcast for 2 or 3 years, I can't remember what you said, that you never missed a week. And that level of consistency, I think, is so critical in building an audience. And number one, I applaud you for that consistency and that dedication. But when you went about that, did you say, okay, did you set a timeline for yourself and say, I'm going to publish every week with no fail? Or did that just kind of happen by your force of, determination? Or was that something you laid out for yourself?
It was when I first launched the podcast, I was playing around with, should I just launch a season and say this is season one of the Content 10x podcast and just commit to something like 12 or 15 or 20 episodes? Because if you say it's a season, it just feels like it's easy to just do an episode and say, well, that wraps up season one. And so I was kind of playing around with, oh, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? And I think I just gave myself a good talking to and said, no, Amy, just commit. Like, don't, if you do that, you're kind of giving yourself the option to wrap up the season. Just commit, and just say that this is weekly and make it weekly for as long as, you can do that. So, I just made that commitment. I think I was very bought into, and I still am, extremely bought into the power of episodic content, of
Mm.
having an episode, and exactly as you do, I mean, wow, I applaud you as well, like, for your consistency is incredible. And there's just so many benefits to it, isn't there? There's you grow an audience, I believe, much faster, and and just you grow the right audience if you are episodic and you have that consistency of something coming out, same time, same place every week, all of that. But people are more like, people get used to, people know what to expect. You can build, it's like your favorite TV show, you can build a fan base. People are more likely to subscribe because they
Mm-hmm.
can see that this is a weekly thing. And I just felt like, if you like our client Jay Bear makes me laugh because he says random acts of content, and he says, if you commit to random acts of content, that's not going to serve you very well. Random acts of content, you're not going to grow an audience in that way. So it felt like a really important commitment. And also, I think more than anything, what I was bearing in mind is practicing what I preach, because if I say that I think that's what you need to do. And also because when clients work with us, they have to have weekly content too, as a minimum. We repurpose a weekly video or a weekly podcast. So I wanted to also empathize and understand what it took
Mm.
our clients to get something to us weekly, so that we could best serve them, and I could help them, and I could have true empathy for what it means to record something every week, learning about batching up and things like that. So but yeah, I really just said, I've got to do this. I've got to practice what I preach. I've got to commit, and let's just give this a go. And I'm sure you're the same. Like, sometimes you do think, maybe I should just call it quits. Maybe I should do something different. Maybe I should move it to monthly or fortnightly or something like that. But so far, every time I've just talked myself out of it and said, no, keep going.
I actually did something. It was very, very painful to do, but in the last 4 months, I was developing my first course. So I launched Brand Strategy 101, which is my first course delivered live. And it's a huge undertaking developing a signature course. And so I had to take a break from YouTube and my podcast and my newsletter. I basically announced to everybody, I said, for the next 3 or 4 months, I'm going dark because I'm developing a piece of content and value that's really important. And I swear to God, it was the hardest thing I ever did to not publish that
Yeah.
first video after 4 years on a Monday. It was torturous. And now that I've taken a break for so long, I'm now delivering the course, but I've got to get back into it. And I feel rusty, actually. It's kind of weird. When people want to work with you, though, I think you said that they have to have, because I'm sure they work with you on retainer, right? So
Yeah,
you have
exactly.
a certain
Yeah.
amount of money you're charging them every month. You're delivering a certain amount of repurposed content, so they have to either have a podcast or a YouTube channel. Are they writers? Are there people who are just writers who do blogging that you repurpose, or is it mostly podcast and video content?
Yeah, we used to have three services. We used to have blog 10x, podcast 10x, and video 10x, and it was exactly that. Your core content will be a blog, a podcast, or a video,
Mm.
and not necessarily a video for YouTube. Some of them may just be doing a weekly video that goes on their website and say, on that they want it repurposing onto Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, that kind of thing. Otherwise, yeah, like YouTube weeklies. But we stopped the blog 10x, so we actually only do like the video and the podcast repurposing now. Really just demand. Like there weren't as many people coming to us who wanted the blog 10x service. Us just trying to streamline and simplify things down a bit as a business, and then also because it's more, say the word easier. Well, yeah, it's easier to repurpose videos and audio than it is just starting with the written word, because obviously there's not those multiple dimensions to the written word. With video, you've always got audio. You've always got the opportunity to turn that into written content by turning the video into a blog post. And then, you've got the option of creating visuals from it and all that kind of stuff. But then, a blog, it's kind of like trying to work that up. How do we turn a blog post into video content and a visual content and things like that? So it's possible, but just really, to streamline what we offered, we only offer those two, but we have one service which is specifically called LinkedIn 10x, and that's designed specifically to help people become the leading authority in their industry on LinkedIn. So that starts with video. That is creating video content for LinkedIn. But then, I don't want to go into loads of detail because I don't want it to sound like a sales pitch, but it's like video for LinkedIn that then becomes a podcast and blog post, but then other content for LinkedIn posts, LinkedIn articles, that kind of thing. So we got rid of the blog 10x in favor of this new LinkedIn 10x service that we offered instead.
One of the things that I noticed, and I was very conscious of the repurposing piece when I started my YouTube channel, because I knew that. I'd be able to get audio, I'd be able to get blog posts, I'd be able to get, video or podcast out of a video. But one of the things that I realized when I started taking my videos and having them transcribed on Rev and then wanting to turn them into blog posts, I realized very quickly that even though my videos were only 10 minutes long and they're very succinct, that even if you transcribe that, it doesn't come across as an article. Like a spoken word does not translate to the way an article reads. And so I initially rewrote some of my blog posts that came from my transcribed videos, and it took a tremendous amount of effort. And I eventually ended up hiring a copywriter who actually would flush them out and add context and examples and backlinks and things like that to make them real kind of meaty articles. But I realized that it wasn't just a plug and play, like get a Rev transcription and then post it on my blog. I had to do a significant amount of editing to really make it feel like an article. How do you guys handle that when it comes to repurposing video content for your clients?
Exactly how you just said. So,
Oh, really?
it's a really time-consuming process for the
It is.
copywriters. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's not at all. We don't even pull off a transcript. It is literally copywriter listening to the entire episode.
Oh, okay.
Making notes, working out what the key points are, and what the flow of the article should be. Like you said, you don't speak how you write. So if you want to call it a transcript, you can call it a transcript, tidy it up, take out all the little typos and things like that, call it a transcript. But if you want to call it a blog post or an article, then it has to be that, doesn't it? And it can't be a transcript. And even just things like, as you mentioned, like tidying it up, adding more context, adding examples, adding analogies. Blog posts need to start with a hook. They need to have a good, clear call to action. If you're speaking, you might say something in a completely different order that logically the article should present that information, because you think of something at the end, and that's way more relevant to something that was said at the start. So that should come up to the top, and that should be mentioned with that. So it's not a simple process at all. I think it can sometimes be a little bit underestimated just how much time it can take to really like repurpose a video or a podcast into a well-written, helpful for SEO, but not keyword stuff, but decent, like SEO focused, like succinct, to the point, following great like copywriting, guidelines and trends and things like that. It can easily take half a day to turn a 10 or 15-minute video into a really good, well-written blog post. So that's what we do. And from a, like, I guess an SEO perspective, if the articles are going on your website, if you do just put a transcript on your website and, get something from Rev or Otter AI and just tidy it up, it's not going to really help you that much with SEO at all, because it isn't written in the correct way. That the bots would just not pick that up as a quality piece of content, wouldn't be, keyword specific, and it wouldn't
Mm.
be really that beneficial. So with a transcript, all you're really doing is offering someone an alternative to watching the video where you can read it word for word. But to me, I just feel the alternative should be, um, something really well written and succinct, clear, concise, ordered in the right way, structured properly, good start, good finish, and all of that. So, like you said, as you picked up, it's not straightforward, and that's why I suppose when, in our line of work, sometimes when you see AI and you see, you sign up to this new service where it's something dollars a month to repurpose your audio or videos into a brilliant blog post for your website, and you kind of think, well, there's no human involvement there. Look at that price. That's obviously AI. And then it's like you kind of think, well, I'm not necessarily threatened by it because it's just a completely different proposition, really. And it's not comparing like for like, it, apples and pears kind of thing. So each to their own. But to do it properly, you've really got to do it, as you said, do it really well and write a really decent article from it.
So you mentioned your new service of LinkedIn 10X, which I think is awesome,
Mm.
because I'm always encouraging creative professionals to make better use of LinkedIn, because that's where business people are and that's where they are connecting with their service providers. So I think that that's fantastic. I want to learn more about that myself, actually. And but because you are so singularly focused on content repurposing, what do you see on the horizon? What's trending? What's new in content repurposing? Is it kind of, oh, is it still what it's always been, or is there any kind of movements or changes in how it's happening that you think are noteworthy, people should know about?
I don't. It's challenging, really. I'm not really sure about things on the kind of the content repurposing horizon. I mean, as I said, like I just mentioned about automation, there's you do see more and more automated repurposing tools coming out.
Mm.
Just today, I'm a subscriber to a newsletter called Pod News with people who have podcasters. It's great, and one of the articles there was, a new bot that will turn podcast episodes into audiograms really quickly and things like that. So I think there's a lot of advancement in that area. And I think there's kind of pros and cons, in terms of it's great if you can have like lower price tools that help you really quickly repurpose certain content into different things. I just think that you need to be really careful with quality and context, because again, say for example, when we're snipping down a video or a podcast into something short for social media, we're listening to it and kind of intelligently picking out, wow, that was an amazing point, and it needs to start exactly when he says that, and it needs to finish when he says that, and that will have impact. That's humans. Whereas like,
Yeah.
sort of an automated, it's just going to try and pick out the end of a sentence and the start of a sentence, and and you can't expect anything more than that, really. So I think there is like, maybe there's a lot of like tools and things like that. So I'm not saying there's anything like wrong with giving them a try, but I think, you just have to be careful in terms of still maintaining quality on platforms and still having kind of context, and not just buying into things that very quickly like slice and dice and slap down content that's going out for your brand that may not be necessarily the best quality. But yeah, other than that, I just see a big movement towards a lot more video content, actually. I think that during the pandemic, people have become more used to creating video content, and not necessarily, I don't even mean pre-recorded video content or, YouTube videos. I even mean just doing Zoom calls and things like that. So
Mm.
people are more used to being on camera than they ever were before. Even the most like, I guess, like camera shy people, after a year of Zoom calls and
You're like,
and
all
you know,
right,
if you
yeah, I can deal with watching
yeah.
myself on camera now.
Exactly. Zoom fatigue. And even just people in positions where you would have maybe face to face trained or taught someone something or things like that, and you're suddenly used to doing a quick video tutorial and, jumping on the camera. I think I've seen more people start to therefore embrace, actually, I think I could do it. I don't mind it that much. I'm used to speaking more on a camera. Maybe I could start creating video content. So I've seen more people willing to give it a try, and people who thought they were camera shy actually thinking that seeing the power of it and seeing
Mm.
that it could be something they could do. And as I always say, I think video content is the very top of the pyramid when it comes to what repurposing, because there's just so many angles that you can play out when you start with video. So I've seen more people realize that if they can overcome fear and shyness and all of that, and they can create video content, they'll start right at the top, and then they'll have all the repurposing opportunities that then trickle down from it. And more people starting to therefore embrace that as well, and start with that in mind. Right, I'm doing video because I'm thinking that it can become X, Y, Z as well. So that think that's the main thing that I'm seeing in the kind of content world, that like more people willing to embrace video.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I always end my interviews with a fairly deep question that I usually give my guests a heads up that I'm going to ask beforehand, and I didn't. I forgot to tell you. So this is
Oh
here's my question.
no.
Here's my question. Do you have a manifesto or a mantra that you try to live your life by?
um Probably have a few actually. I'd say one of them is like a saying that's always stuck in my head, which is change what you can't accept and accept what you can't change.
Mm.
Um, and I think I'm really kind of strongly believe in that. I'm the kind of person that if you can't change something, then just accept it. Like we couldn't change the things going on with the pandemic, that we were in lockdown, things like that. Find a place in your brain, like a way to accept it because you can't change it, and embrace and move on and be positive. And then the flip side, or change what you can't accept. So if you can't accept something and it's burning you up inside and it's really frustrating, you don't carry on not accepting it. Like, so change what you can't accept and accept what you can't change. um I'd say that, yeah, if I could choose one thing, I always think that way. I've thought that way in the last challenging year about everything that's gone on, and I have changed what I can change and I've accepted what I can't change. So yeah,
I
I'd say
love
that.
that. That's fantastic. So, how would you like people to contact you if they need to get in touch?
It's super simple actually, because I'm at Content 10x on all of the social media platforms. So that's easy to find. Or otherwise, just head on over to the website again, Content 10x, so content10x.com. That would be fantastic.
Awesome. Amy, thank you so much for talking to us today. I really appreciate your coming on the Brand Design Masters podcast. And I encourage anyone who's interested in content repurposing to get in touch with Amy because she is a rock star.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been fantastic.
See you later.